This is Crew Tales, Life in the Circus. In the motion picture world, there are an army of dedicated professionals who work behind the scenes to make the movies and shows we watch today. I'm Brad Hodson, and I've spent over 30 years in the motion picture industry. This podcast celebrates the people who make the magic behind the scenes. Hello, Phil, and welcome to the Circus.
Thanks, Brad. Good to be here.
In your words, what do you do for a living?
What do I do for a living? I'm a cinematographer. Another name for it is director of photography. And I like to think I take a script and a director's vision and interpret that vision visually, then create that interpretation for the editor to edit and come out the other side as a visual story. So there's many ways. If you tell a story, you can tell it in many different ways. By being, let's say, warmer or cooler, or more camera movement or less camera movement, or closer to the actor or farther away. All those have an effect on how the audience perceives the story. And so those are the choices that a cinematographer makes to craft a story that supports it in a way that's digestible for the audience and hopefully enjoyable for the audience, or thought-provoking for the audience.
How did you get here? Describe your journey to become a cinematographer.
I started as an actor. First of all, my dad was a photographer, so we always had cameras around the house, and I was very interested in photography and videography, and just the film industry and entertainment in general. And so in high school, I was an actor. I was the lead of the high school play, and we won competitions with our acting group, and I was very, very much interested in that. When I left high school to be an actor, went to a few cattle calls and tried to get an agent, and realized that maybe I wanted to make films and that I could put myself and other friends in, and that was quite interesting to me. So I kind of started down the path of learning how to make films.
And not only do you make films and dramatic series, which you have quite a list on your resume of, but you've done some documentary as well. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the docs you've done?
Yeah, so I worked on a series called I Am. So we did I Am Heath Ledger, I Am Richard Pryor, and they're just looking at people's lives, entertainers' lives, interesting people, and how their lives were kind of lived. So we go back in time and find supporting films and photographs, interview people from their lives to talk about them, and kind of get a overall portrayal of their life and for an audience to think about.
Describe some of the differences between dramatic and documentary in your position.
Differences between dramatic and documentary from a cinematographer's perspective. Dramatic is a little more of a puzzle that you're building. So you're taking different parts of the script and you're interpreting them and kind of creating a story. And documentary, you're a little more going to where the story is and capturing it, and then putting the puzzle pieces together. So it's kind of the difference between, in photography, sometimes we say you're making a picture or you're taking a picture. And I think dramatic work is more about making the picture, and documentary is more about taking the picture. So documentary is a lot more sort of in the moment, being ready for anything, and kind of being very aware of your surroundings and space, and tuning into what's happening and being ready to capture that at any moment.
You have a preference of one to the other?
I really think they inform each other. A lot of times on a dramatic show, you can get too lost in the details, too lost into the scheduling and the logistics of the show, and you lose that kind of in the moment perspective, which is a lot of times where the magic happens and spontaneity happens, which audiences can really connect with. So if you do documentary work and then take that kind of ideology to a large kind of dramatic show where everything's planned out, you can bring back some of that life and spontaneity. And vice versa, if you take your dramatic kind of concepts when you're lighting a large space or lighting for a kind of this perfect image, it makes you kind of quicker at doing that in real time on a documentary. So your documentaries can look better, higher production value, even though you are being very kind of aware and moving with life. Yeah.
In your job, what in particular would you put up on the top three favorite things you do? What is it about your job that you find most satisfying?
The most satisfying parts of my job, I don't know if I can give you three, but I know there's the one thing. It's when you plan a shot and you execute it and you see it back, and it has not only the shot that you planned for, but it has something more, and that's that inexplainable something. It has that effect that you were going for. It has that emotional connection that people look at it and go, "Wow, I resonate with that. I can see it, or I feel something there." When you create that inexplainable, I always say, like, cinematography is about exploring life beyond words, because we use cinematography and photography as a communication method where words end. So we can actually communicate thoughts and feelings that are inexplainable to by words.
On that, would you say you had a particular style? I mean, we can watch movies and say, "Oh, well, we know who shot that." Would you consider yourself someone who has a particular style in the way they shoot?
There's a few different approaches to this job, and one is to say, "I am this. I only shoot documentaries, or I only shoot action films, or whatever it may be," and you become that person. You're the person that shoots, whatever you've chosen. I don't subscribe to that for myself. I like to. I enjoy the storytelling process, and whatever genre is around that, I'm going to explore that genre and lean into it, and try and discover it in my own way. In that sense, I don't have a style, but there's many um, kind of patterns I fall into, as far as who I hire, and the crew that I surround myself with, and the equipment that I surround myself with, sort of creates a bit of a pattern in my lighting, and a pattern in my camera movement that you could call a style.
As always, I'm assuming too, a director can come to you and say, "Look, I'm looking for something a little bit like this," and you can. Film is collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Motion picture
Oh,
industry is all about collaboration. So it could be a director that come up to you and said, "Well, for this episode or even this movie, I would like to see a little more of this." And that's something that you can interpolate through their words.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is a big collaboration. Uh, you know, when I say I'm creating a style or a genre, that is all through, first of all, the script that's written. So the director and producer get that. We figure out how to do it budgetarily, and then we also figure out how to do it emotionally and through actors, and the final image is really a conversation between the director, the art director, and the director of photography.
Is it always that way, or have you ever been on a project where they just said, "Phil, it's all yours. Do what you like,"
Mm-hmm.
or is that more for projects that are closer to your heart?
I've met some directors that may not have the technical vocabulary or knowledge, but everybody can describe a feeling, and that's all I need to really collaborate with. If you can describe to me, or show me some reference images about what kind of feeling you want to portray for a given scene or a show, then we can work together. I can take over the technical know-how and put together the pieces that we need to accomplish that.
Right. You also shot in film, like predominantly today. These days, we shoot entirely digital. Um, but you've also shot film. Can you describe a little bit some of the hurdles or some of the changes that you found were most prominent during the transition of from film to digital, rather?
Are you looking for speaking about the transition itself or the differences between the two?
How would it affect your job? Obviously, you could describe even too how film reacts differently than digital, for example.
The transition from film to digital affected my job actually in a very good way. My career was built at a time when digital was first starting out and there was a bit of resistance to using it. And that allowed me to actually get some work because I bought a digital camera early and allowed me to kind of like show my chops where film was very prohibitive, the cost of it. And you had to kind of know people to borrow a camera and talk to rental houses to try and get them to lend you equipment that purchasing or was just not an option. So politically, it worked very well. I still think that we lost some workflow advantages with film. The changing of the mag kind of gave everybody a break for a second to think about what they were doing. There was definitely a lot more care and time that goes into every shot when you're spending $1 a foot or whatever it was. There was a lot more kind of like reverence and respect for the image, I think, where in digital you can kind of shoot all day and change it. There's not the same kind of pressure to make it perfect, right?
Phil, you just received a presidential award by the CSC for outstanding service. Um, Congratulations.
Thank you.
What brought that on? What was the impetus to getting that award?
So the CSC has done a lot of growing in the past few years. In 2020, I was working on a show, Star Trek Discovery, and they decided to shoot on a virtual production stage. Virtual production stage is basically, instead of green screen, we use large LED panels to project the background image. And so I kind of had 2 seasons of virtual production shooting knowledge, skill that I felt the responsibility to share that knowledge with other cinematographers. It was kind of a young technology at the time. It still is, but a lot more people are starting to use it and understand it. At the time, the CSC was looking to put together education on advancing technologies. And part of that was virtual production. So the CSC asked me to put together a curriculum. I brought in Andy Brown and Marco Basso, and together we built a curriculum around virtual production. And we put on 2 master classes, one in Toronto and one in Vancouver. And this really helped the CSC kind of grow. And the award itself was actually a complete surprise to me. I got an email one day saying I would be the recipient of this award. And it was very nice to be recognized for that work.
Could you share a little bit of the difference? Green screen is kind of commonly known, especially in digital effects. We kind of see that quite a bit. How is the virtual wall different from a green screen?
So green screen, there's kind of a blanket term, virtual production. Virtual production can mean many things, but at its base, it means in-camera visual effects. And even in camera is loose because it could just be on your monitor. So you can actually use green screen for virtual production. If you're tracking your camera and you're replacing that background in real time, and that's what you see on the monitor, that can be virtual production. So the in-camera visual effects is the part where we use an LED wall in place of green screen. We track motion on our camera, and we use video game technology and software to project backgrounds built in a game engine. And those backgrounds update in real time as we move our camera. Parallax, the relationship between objects changes and moves as we move our camera in the stage. So it gives a very realistic effect.
I expect that helps performances for actors as well.
Yeah, virtual production can really help performances for actors because they feel like they're in the space. You know, you're really in this cave or forest or wherever it is. And also, as cinematographers, we get this very complex lighting, very much like it is in the real world. You have, let's say you're in a forest, you have your trees, your green trees, your brown ground, and you have kind of this white in the sky. Well, that can kind of represent itself in the face. So you can kind of get these very complex lighting, and it can feel quite realistic. Also, reflections in eyeballs, or say you had a shiny outfit. All of that would look quite realistic. And
vehicle paint, glasses, etc. So
correct,
what you're saying is the light from the LED screen
Mhm.
can behave similar to ambient light outside.
Yes,
It's a different way of, as opposed to a green screen where it's all you, and in fact you have to avoid the green coming off of the green screen to say the actor's skin.
yeah, exactly. A green stage can have a lot of green spill on the actors. You can get it in the face, and a lot of what we're doing at that point is trying to light the actors in a way that we're reducing the green spill on them. And then it can look quite, generally green screen lighting can look quite just flat, because also as cinematographers, sometimes you don't know exactly what's going to be on the background. There might be some discussion on it. You might have some drawings. At best, you're going to see some still images of what's going to be in the background, so you can get kind of cues about lighting, but you're generally lighting it a little more just generally, whereas in a virtual production stage or an in-camera VFX stage, you can see that the sky's over there, and I can place another light as motivation and enhance that lighting from that sky, and it's all going to sync up.
And my understanding is too, you could change the time of day real time as well, could you not?
Yeah, there's a lot of real-time adjustments you can do. You can move the sun, you can change the sky. It's all dependent on a processor, so it depends on the stage's computer processing power, or how many graphics cards they have. The more they have, the more adjustments in real time they can do. And the software is getting better as well in Unreal. In the later versions of Unreal, past 5, you get real time updates and lighting as well.
So you'd have to build this virtual set, as it were. So if I'm the production producer, production team, I say, hey Phil, we're going to be shooting in the Arctic, example, or bad example, some structure in the Arctic. That has to be built along with the environment itself. Does that take long, or I assume there's
It does, and it depends. There's smaller stages, there's smaller sets, there's um, typically, what, as an example, on a Star Trek Discovery set, our stage is 70 feet wide by 120 feet long. It's a horseshoe. So we have to build everything what we call outside the stage, or in VFX world. We have to build that as a set, and then we have to physically build what's inside the set as well. And those two have to match. So we're scanning objects and we're mirroring them in the virtual world, and we're taking virtual 3D objects and we're building them in the art department world, and we're matching paint textures and colors. And so that it can be a bit of a process to blend it, as we say, to keep it all cohesive as one world. But once it starts to happen and syncs up, it really, from the camera's perspective, feels like one cohesive world.
so it saves you time in the end, but it takes a long time to set up and construct these sets and the virtual set as well.
It can. The tools are getting a lot quicker. So, and there's also libraries of sets that you can buy. So, as an independent filmmaker, or kind of doing it on a low budget scale, there's kind of options to download sets and use them right away. If you're not seeing the floor, then you don't necessarily have to build a physical set. Maybe putting some objects between you and the wall to break it up and give yourself a bit of a mid ground can help, sell the effect. But, it kind of depends what you're doing. Backgrounds. If you see feet, it's usually a lot more money.
Where do you see the future of this virtual technology? Do you think it's going to replace all film sets? Do you think it's going to replace working outside, or is this a tool used for a specific kind of movie?
I certainly don't see it replacing everything we do. I do see it becoming more prevalent. I see a world where A lot of shows have some component of their script shot on a VFX stage. It's just way easier to shoot on a VFX stage than to go to Mars. It's very hard to bring your crew there, and you can build a Mars set outside, but it's just not going to look right. Or whatever planet you want to insert there. There's some locations you just can't go to, and so that's where it really shines. And there's also advantages to light. You can shoot sunsets for 5-6 hours at a time, and then it doesn't change. The light doesn't change. And there's advantages to weather as well. If you want to shoot in a snowstorm but don't actually want to be in a snowstorm, you can go there and do that. So I do see a big advantage to them, and I think they had a little hiccup with the strikes and kind of in taking off, but I feel there's still a want and a need to use them, and they just need pushing a little bit more for the kind of cost to come down and everybody to start to use them as well. There's some color challenges as well that manufacturers of panels are starting to overcome. The color is becoming more accurate, and some of the light quality is getting better. So I think we'll see more adoption for the short term.
Right. Speaking of virtual and kind of in the similar vein, has AI affected your part of the industry at all?
I think we see AI a lot more than we know at this point. I think there's a lot of AI going on right now, and we're seeing it, definitely in the YouTube, Instagram, social media spaces. And those can be precursors to higher end productions using them. There's just so many efficiencies with AI that I think are just going to be undeniably accessible to producers who are working within a budget. And I think it's going to get adopted very rapidly. Some of these AI tools.
There's a school of thought that the more AI tools means more content, and more content means more things being shot. Would you agree with that? I mean, there's also a school where it says, well, AI is going to replace all our jobs, but I feel it's got to be somewhere in the middle. I think it's all about content. The more content, the more can be shot, the more money can be made.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of people out there that want to make stories, and everybody has a social media feed. Everybody has access to a video camera in their pocket now, and more people are learning how to tell a story through that medium. And AI is just going to make that much more easier. So there'll be, I think, like you say, there'll be a lot more production with a changing of roles and shifting of jobs. I think there will be some jobs lost for sure, but there'll be new ones created. Whether it'll be even, I don't know. Um, but just like when we saw the transition from film to digital, there were jobs created and jobs lost. Need to load the camera anymore. But DITs were created. Data management was created. There were a ton of jobs in the post world were created. I see a lot of those jobs in posts getting affected first. The assistant editors, the assistant sound people, because AI is already starting to do a very good job of organizing footage for us and creating music, creating some footage for us. And I think it's going to be a big shift.
Sure. On that note, what advice would you give to someone up and coming who loves to watch movies, loves sci-fi, wants to make their own movies, or wants to get involved in the business and do what you do? What advice do you give them?
I think giving any advice I could give to somebody wanting to do this is do it. I try to not do this job for money. It's a great advantage, and obviously I'm very, very lucky to have made
A living.
make a living off of it. Yeah. But I think my approach has always been, what do I love about filmmaking? And if I can fulfill that creative need in me, then that's more important than money. I know that's easy to say, I think that's what people connect with the most. Like if you're a young filmmaker and you're creating something that means a lot to you, people are going to connect with that. And, uh, and I think people will ultimately will hire you and give you work based on that.
I think the beauty of it is, as opposed to 30 years ago where you had to have the money to pay for the film and processing of the film, now you could make a short on your phone, and in a short amount of time, you could send it to the world and get people to notice. I think that's to an advantage for people who really want to work up the ladder. Is to you can do it yourself. It's way easier to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, enough about work. Phil, what do you do outside of work to entertain yourself or just relax? I understand you recently came back from Alaska.
Yeah. My work and play really blend. Like when I'm on a day off, I generally have a camera with me and I'm looking for an interesting image or finding something that inspires me or I like to create, no matter what. And similarly, when I'm at work, I'm having a lot of fun. So they both blend a lot. But yes, I went to Alaska on a motorcycle. Friend and I went up. We took 15 days, and I decided to shoot it. Bring way too much film equipment, and made a little documentary out of it. We're editing it now, so I don't know when that'll be released. But yeah, what I like to do for fun beyond filmmaking, I enjoy exercise. I like getting out, hiking, swimming, biking, motorcycling. All of those kind of keep me sharp and able to do what I love to do most, which is work on a film set. I find film sets can be kind of the opposite of that. They can you're sitting for long hours. You're maybe not eating the healthiest food. You're in studios often with a lot of smoke, and it can be a little damaging on your health. So whenever I get time off, I'm usually working on keeping up my mental and physical health.
Brilliant.
Mm.
What next for you? Short term, long term? Do you have any goals you have yet to fulfill and want to share those?
Yeah, next for me, I'm starting another show soon. So I'm deep in the prep process. I'm reading scripts daily and breaking them down and figuring out how to approach them. And so that'll take up my next 6 months. I'll be going to Toronto and living and working.
Phil, how do you think AI is going to affect virtual production?
I think AI and virtual production are going to start blending a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of AI tools for creating backgrounds, creating environments that you would like. And I think maybe a little farther down the road, AI will start doing some of the work that virtual production is doing. So in camera, real time rotoscoping, cutting out people. And also, I think I'm already seeing tools to relight people. So you may take your environment and light someone more flat, and then AI will kind of wrap them in the light that your background is in. So I see a world eventually where we may not need virtual production or green screen, that the camera's just going to know where that person is and be able to cut them out of the background. Now, there still is an argument for having an actor in the right environment so that their character feels a connection to their environment. I think that's going to be quite valid. But the cost of virtual production walls and stages is quite expensive. And I think there's going to be some productions that are using cheaper methods to do a similar result.
So, Phil, let's talk equipment.
Mm-hmm.
What's in your kit, both on set professionally and what do you use when you're out and about on the motorcycle and traveling?
Well, my basement office is way too messy with just stuff everywhere. I like every kind of camera. I have film cameras. I have film panning cameras, medium format. I like to shoot stills. I have action cameras, 360 cameras, all different kinds of lenses. Just anything to get an interesting image. I like playing with all that. I like shooting on my iPhone. I'll do scouts on my iPhone. And then professionally, I like using high-end cinema cameras and that kind of workflow where you're getting the best of the best image. But I really think the kind of newer cameras that are coming out, are creating spectacular images. The dynamic range and the color fidelity and the resolution is really quite stunning, and you can do a lot on a very low budget and small camera.
Professionally, do you have a lens favorite, or does it depend on the format of the show you're working on?
Yeah, it really depends. Lens choice really depends on the show I'm working on. Personal favorite is a Panavision C series, and that's a bit of a goat lens. It's the god of all things. It's I just love the complex flare characteristics you get out of them, and they really have a nostalgic kind of feel for me, and I really like those. Now I've been working in space for the last kind of 4 years, so that might have something to do with it. I think if I was on another show, I may fall in love with something else. But there's some vintage lenses that I like, some that really have some character, and anything that kind of creates a mood.
One thing I always love to see when I'm on a set is you see the camera, which is probably a year old, and the lens, which is probably could be up to 60 years old.
Yeah.
I still find that astounding. And you talk to layman people, we're like, well, look, my iPhone can do 4K. Yeah, but the piece of plastic it shoots through
Yeah.
kind of degrades a little bit.
It does, and it's really a subconscious thing. I mean, we have memories from childhood of these photographs of our parents and picnics or whatever. All of those were shot through glass that was made back then and tuned back then for a format back then, and those have a real effect on our subconscious. Like those really play into it. So when we're crafting emotion and connection with the audience, we're thinking about how that has an effect on the story.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, thank you for joining us at the Circus.
Thanks, Brad.
Well, that about wraps it up for another episode of Crew Tales, Life in the Circus. I'd like to thank our producers Dustin Schwinnard and Dustin Girton, as well as our technical producer Rob Hunt. I'm Brad Hodson. Thank you for joining us.